The morning sun peeked through the tall trees, sprinkling golden light over the schoolyard. Children ran about, laughter echoing across the dusty ground, and in the middle of all that cheerful chaos sat Rahul and Arjun beneath their favorite neem tree. It had always been their place, where they ate lunch, shared secrets, and made plans for the future. They were an unlikely pair, Rahul, quiet and observant, always thinking before he spoke, Arjun, loud and impulsive, the kind of boy everyone noticed the moment he entered a room. Yet somehow, they fit perfectly together, bound by years of shared laughter, inside jokes, and unwavering loyalty. They had met in kindergarten, when Arjun had accidentally spilled paint on Rahul's shirt. Instead of getting angry, Rahul had helped him clean up, and by the end of that day, they were building sandcastles together. From then on, they were inseparable, partners in every science fair, every football match, every mischief the teachers scolded them for. Their friendship had grown stronger with each year, like a tree whose roots had intertwined deep beneath the soil. But time changes people, even the best of friends. As they reached middle school, Arjun began to change in ways Rahul couldn't quite understand. He became more concerned about popularity, about how others saw him. He started spending time with classmates who liked to show off, who made fun of those who weren't as confident or loud. Rahul, still the quiet dreamer, often stood at the edge of those circles, feeling more like a shadow than a friend. One day, their teacher announced a science project, a model of a sustainable city. "You can work in pairs," she said. Naturally, Rahul and Arjun teamed up. Rahul was thrilled. It was the kind of project he loved, detailed, creative, full of possibilities. They met after school at Rahul's house, where he sketched ideas on old papers, drew solar panels, and cut out little cardboard buildings. Arjun helped too, though more in spirit than in effort. He preferred to talk about how everyone would be impressed when they presented it. For 3 days, Rahul poured his heart into the model. He painted tiny roads, made miniature trees from green sponges, even crafted a small water reservoir from a plastic cap. He wanted it to be perfect, not for grades, but because it was something they were doing together. When the day of presentation arrived, their project stood proudly on the teacher's desk, gleaming with effort and care. The entire class gathered around, whispering in admiration. Rahul smiled shyly, waiting for Arjun to start explaining their work as they had rehearsed. But when the teacher asked who had done the model, Arjun stepped forward with an eager grin. "I built most of it," he said confidently. Rahul helped a bit, but the design and concept were mine. For a second, Rahul thought he had misheard. His heart stopped. The words echoed in his head, each one sharper than the last. The teacher nodded approvingly, praising Arjun for his creativity. The class clapped, and Rahul just stood there, frozen, feeling invisible. When the bell rang and everyone left, Rahul stayed behind, staring at the model they had made together. The little trees, the painted houses, they all felt meaningless now. Arjun came up behind him, laughing, completely unaware of the storm inside Rahul. "Don't take it so seriously, Yar," Arjun said, brushing off the matter. "It's just a school project. You know how teachers are, they like confident answers." "It wasn't just confidence," Rahul said quietly. His voice trembled, not with anger, but with pain. "You lied." Arjun's smile faltered. "Oh come on, it's not a big deal. You always get nervous talking in class anyway. I was just helping us both." Rahul turned to him, eyes filled with disbelief. "Helping us? You took all the credit. You didn't even mention my name." The argument grew, voices rising in the empty classroom. "You're overreacting," Arjun said, irritation creeping into his tone. "Maybe you're just jealous because people finally noticed me." Those words cut deeper than anything else. Rahul stared at him for a long moment, the silence between them growing heavier with each heartbeat. Finally, he said softly, "You've changed, Arjun. I don't even recognize you anymore." And he walked away. From that day on, everything was different. They no longer sat together under the neem tree. At lunch, Rahul sat alone, sketching quietly in his notebook, while Arjun laughed loudly with his new group of friends. The distance between them grew, invisible but impossible to cross. Rahul never spoke badly about Arjun, not once. Even when others mentioned how unfair it had been, he just shrugged and said, "It doesn't matter." But deep down, it did. The betrayal hurt more than he wanted to admit. Months passed, and life moved on. Arjun became one of the most popular boys in school, teachers praised him, students admired him. But no matter how many friends surrounded him, he often found his gaze wandering toward the neem tree, where Rahul still sat. He wanted to talk, to apologize, but his pride always stopped him. He told himself that Rahul had overreacted, that it wasn't his fault. Yet every night, when he lay in bed, a small voice whispered otherwise. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late, and the city streets were slick with rain. Arjun had stayed out with friends longer than usual, and as he rode his bike home, the rain poured harder, blurring the road. The tires slipped on the wet pavement, and before he could react, his bike skidded violently. The world spun. He hit the ground hard, pain shooting through his leg. He cried out, but the storm drowned his voice. His bike had fallen on top of him, trapping his leg. The rain kept falling, cold and merciless. Fear crept in as he realized there was no one nearby. He tried to move, but the pain was unbearable. Then, through the sheets of rain, a figure appeared, running, shouting his name. It was Rahul. Without hesitation, Rahul rushed to him, his clothes soaked, his breath ragged. He lifted the heavy bike, pulled Arjun free, and tore a strip from his shirt to wrap around the bleeding wound. His hands trembled, but his eyes were calm. Rahul, Arjun gasped, his voice breaking. Why did you help me? Rahul looked at him, rain dripping from his hair, and gave a small, tired smile. Because being kind is never a mistake. No matter what happened between us. Those words hit harder than any scolding ever could. Arjun felt the weight of his guilt crash down on him. As the sound of an approaching ambulance grew louder, he realized how blind he had been, how cruel pride had made him. Rahul stayed by his side until the paramedics arrived. As they lifted Arjun onto the stretcher, he grabbed Rahul's hand weakly. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice trembling. Rahul just squeezed his hand and said, "Get well soon." Then he stepped back into the rain, disappearing as quietly as he had come. That night, as Arjun lay in the hospital bed, he couldn't sleep. Every drop of rain against the window reminded him of the boy who had once been his best friend, the boy he had hurt but who had still chosen kindness over resentment. For the first time in a long while, Arjun cried, not from pain, but from regret. The morning sun filtered through the hospital window, casting pale gold light on the room where Arjun lay. His leg was bandaged, the pain dull but constant. The smell of antiseptic filled the air, and the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor echoed softly in the silence. On the small table beside his bed sat a modest bouquet of white lilies with a note that read simply, "Get well soon, buddy." Arjun stared at the handwriting for a long time. He didn't need to see the name to know who it was from. Rahul. His chest tightened with guilt, a lump rising in his throat. How could someone he had betrayed still care enough to save him, to visit, to leave flowers when he hadn't even said thank you? Days passed, and the hospital room began to feel smaller, heavier. Friends came and went, most stayed only long enough to post a selfie and say something like, "Get well soon, bro." But Rahul never came again after that first day. He had done his part, helped, and then disappeared quietly. Somehow, that hurt more than if Rahul had ignored him completely. When Arjun was finally discharged, he returned to school on crutches. Everyone greeted him warmly, but their words bounced off him like empty echoes. He felt a hollowness inside that applause couldn't fill. He laughed when people joked, smiled when they asked about his injury, but all he could think of was Rahul's face in the rain, calm, kind, forgiving. At lunch break, Arjun found himself wandering toward the old neem tree without thinking. It was strange how the place looked exactly the same, the wide branches, the familiar patch of shadow, even the faint carvings they'd made on the bark years ago, R+A=, best friends forever. The words were faded now, half erased by time, yet they stood as a quiet reminder of what once was. And there, sitting cross-legged under the tree, was Rahul. He was sketching something in his notebook, lost in concentration. His school bag was beside him, and the same calm, thoughtful expression he'd always had rested on his face. For a moment, Arjun froze. He wanted to turn around, to leave before Rahul noticed him. But something inside pushed him forward. He took a deep breath and limped closer. Rahul looked up when the shadow fell over his page. For a second, neither of them spoke. Rahul's eyes softened, but his face stayed neutral, cautious. "Hey," he said simply. "Hey," Arjun replied, his voice barely audible. Mind if I sit? Rahul hesitated, then nodded. Arjun lowered himself carefully, his crutches leaning against the tree. The silence between them stretched, heavy but not hostile. Birds chirped in the branches above, and the faint sound of students playing echoed across the field. I owe you an apology, Arjun said finally, his voice trembling. Actually, I owe you a lot more than that. Rahul didn't reply, just closed his notebook and waited. I was horrible to you, Arjun continued, his words tumbling out. I lied, I took credit for your work, and then I blamed you for everything. I was proud and selfish, and when you walked away, I told myself I didn't care. But the truth is, I did. I just didn't want to admit I was wrong. His eyes glistened, and he looked away, embarrassed. And then that night, when you helped me, I couldn't stop thinking about it. You had every reason to hate me, but you didn't. You saved me, Rahul. You showed me what being a real friend means. I don't deserve your kindness, but, his voice broke slightly. But I want to try to make things right. If you'll let me. The breeze rustled through the leaves. Rahul sat still, eyes thoughtful. Then, slowly, he stood up and extended his hand. Friends don't need to start over, he said quietly. They just forgive and move forward. For a moment, Arjun could only stare. Then he took Rahul's hand, gripping it tightly. Something inside him, something heavy and sharp, finally shattered. He smiled through the tears threatening to fall, and Rahul smiled back, the kind of warm, genuine smile that had once been their unspoken bond. They sat again, this time side by side, and for the first time in months, they talked, really talked. About everything: school, teachers, funny memories, even stupid jokes that made them laugh until their stomachs hurt. It was as if the months of distance had melted away under that neem tree, washed clean by the simple act of forgiveness. The following days were different. They began to walk to class together again, and though some students whispered and stared, neither cared. Arjun found himself listening more, speaking less, learning from the quiet strength in Rahul's nature. He realized how much he had taken for granted, how kindness didn't make a person weak, it made them brave. A few weeks later, during the school assembly, their teacher asked each student to share something they had learned recently, not from books, but from life. When it was Arjun's turn, he walked slowly to the front, the sound of his crutches tapping softly on the floor. He took a deep breath and said, I learned that success means nothing if you lose your kindness. I thought being admired made me strong, but I was wrong. True strength is helping others, forgiving others, even when they don't deserve it. Because one day, you might be the one who needs forgiveness too. The hall was silent for a moment, then filled with applause. But Arjun didn't look at the crowd, his eyes found Rahul, sitting quietly in the third row, smiling proudly. That small smile was worth more than all the clapping in the world. After the assembly, as they walked home, Arjun said softly, You know, I used to think being kind made people soft. Rahul looked at him, amused. And now I think kindness is the only thing that keeps us human, Arjun replied. It's harder than it looks, but it's worth it. Rahul chuckled. Took you long enough to figure that out. They both laughed, their footsteps crunching softly against the gravel path. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in orange and pink. The neem tree behind them swayed gently in the wind, its leaves whispering like an old friend watching over them. When they reached the corner where their paths split, Arjun stopped. Rahul, he said quietly. Thank you, for forgiving me. For everything. Rahul turned, the light catching his face. Just promise me one thing, he said. Always be kind. Arjun nodded, the words sinking deep into his heart. Always, he promised. And as they walked their separate ways beneath the golden sky, both boys knew that something beautiful had been rebuilt. Not the old friendship, but a stronger one, forged through pain, humility, and the quiet power of forgiveness. In the years to come, Arjun would carry that lesson everywhere. He would stand up for others, lend a hand when someone stumbled, and smile at strangers who looked like they needed kindness. Because he had learned, through one act of compassion under a stormy sky, that kindness is never wasted. It may not always be returned, but it always changes something, often the giver most of all. And so, the neem tree stood as their silent witness, its branches stretching wide, sheltering the two boys whose friendship had survived pride, pain, and time itself, all because one of them chose to be kind.